Hi guys, welcome back to the Momma Nurse channel where we discuss everything nursing, motherhood, and lifestyle. I'm Vanessa. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you can be notified every time we drop a new video. So I figured what better time than now, right around Christmas time, to share my birth stories with you guys. So if you don't know, I have 4 children. My oldest is 4, my youngest is 4 months. So I have a 4-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 4-month-old. My 4-month-old will be 5 months on Christmas Eve. I've had 4 natural births, so I'm gonna share my stories and my experiences with you guys. So I had my first child in 2016 and it was my son. He's now 4 years old. I remember vividly waking up that morning. It was like 4:45 and I woke up because I had these really sharp pains in my stomach. This was a couple days before my due date. One more shift of work, which was gonna be that night. And after that, I was gonna start my maternity leave. So I had already worked 3 day shifts, but one of my coworkers needed some help, needed somebody to cover their night shift. So I figured, hey, I'm about to be off for 3 months, so why not? So I told her I would work for her. Lo and behold, I woke up that morning in excruciating pain. So I checked the time and I made note of it and I was like, okay, let me try to go back to sleep. If it comes back again, then I know it's contractions. If not, then something is definitely wrong. So went back to sleep. 15 minutes later, I woke up again with the same pain. So I figured that it had to be contractions. So I woke my spouse up, let him know. That way he could just kind of keep an eye on me, make sure that everything was okay. I went back to sleep. So I had a little notepad next to my bed, and every time I woke up, I would write down the time and then kind of just sleep through it. So this went on till about 3 o'clock, I would say. I just kind of lounged around, took it easy. I got up, I took a shower, I had some lunch. I don't remember if I ate breakfast or not that morning, but I know I had lunch for sure. Took a shower and everything like that. I'll keep the TMI stuff out of this video because nobody wants to hear that. I got up, I took a shower, and just kind of rested in the bed, watched movies and things like that. I already had my bags packed and everything. 4 o'clock that afternoon, when I went to the bathroom, I passed my mucus plug. So once I seen that, then I was like, okay, it's time to go to the hospital. My spouse got the car ready. We drove to the hospital. At the time, we were living about 7 minutes from the hospital, so it wasn't too far. We got there, checked in, got into our room and everything like that. The nurses came in, they started my admission paperwork, started my IV, and my mom ended up arriving. So it was my spouse and my mom in the delivery room with me. And we went ahead, we did the paperwork, and once the paperwork was done, pretty much right around that time, the contractions started getting a little bit more intense and a little bit harder to just breathe through. They were very painful, but I knew that I wanted to have a natural birth, so I just kind of would close my eyes and just breathe and let them pass. So about 7:30, I'll say, contractions started getting really close together. I ended up having my son at 8 p.m. that night, and it was a natural delivery. He came after about 5 to 6 pushes, I would say, and he was out, he was healthy, he was crying, and that was my first delivery. Baby number 1 was 8 pounds, 1 ounce. So with baby number 2, this was less than a year later. It was actually the day before baby number 1's birthday. So I went to my doctor for a checkup. I was a couple days once again before my due date, or actually with her, I was a couple days after my due date. Not too many, like maybe 2 or 3 days. And I went to my doctor for a checkup, and I know for sure that my membranes ruptured at the checkup. So I went home. My appointment was at about 9 o'clock. I went home at about noon. My contractions started. And it went pretty quickly with this one because by 2 o'clock, my spouse noticed that I was in more pain than I was the first time. So he recommended that we go to the hospital. Me being stubborn, I was like, no, I'm okay. And he was like, no, I think we should go. Luckily, I took his word for it. We went to the hospital, got checked in, and within 2 hours, my daughter arrived. So this is my 3-year-old baby number 2. Oh, baby number 2 was 8 pounds, 11 ounces. Same thing, they did the paperwork. I had my IV, and she was in the world the day before her big brother's first birthday. So he was able to come meet her, and from day one, they were like this. She knows no life without him, and no lie, to this day, if you see one, you see the other. Always look out for each other, and they're just a really good team. I love seeing their bond, and it just makes me so blessed and happy to see how much they love each other. Fast forward a year and a half later, we had baby number 3. This is my 2-year-old, another daughter. It was another situation where I was almost on maternity leave, but she actually came 2 weeks early. I was at work. I had worked 2 shifts, and I was on my 3rd shift, and then I was gonna have a couple days off, and I was on shift. As you know, I'm a nurse. I work in a hospital, so we do 12-hour shifts, and at this time I was still working day shift. I was at work. I started not really having pain, but started having some cramping, but it didn't really feel like contractions. So I honestly just felt like I was overdoing it. I think I had 3 patients that day, one of whom we were getting ready to withdraw. One was like a walkie-talkie, and the 3rd was a vented patient. So it was a lot of back and forth throughout the shift. So I honestly just thought that I was doing too much. So I went and I sat down for a little bit. I was like, okay, let me just chart, take it easy. I sat down, the pain went away. I had to get back up. My walkie-talkie patient had just got back from, I think, a CAT scan or x-ray or something like that, or a test of some sort. And so I went back into the room to kind of get him reconnected to the monitors and everything like that. Planning to be discharged later that afternoon, so I was just reconnecting him to the monitors for the time being. So I went in the room. I did want to change out his linen, so I was doing that real quick, and the pain came back again. I know better than to be 9 months pregnant or 8.5 months pregnant and do too much. So I went ahead and told the patient that I would be right back. I stepped away and I went back and I sat down, and I asked one of my coworkers to just finish straightening up the bed for him. Coworker did that, and I kind of sat there, and at that time I pulled out my phone and did 2 things. I texted my spouse and told him to be ready because the baby could possibly be coming. And the second thing I did was set my timer. So I set my timer because I wanted to see if these were real contractions. And 3 minutes later, the pain came back again. So at this point, I was nervous. I was not working in the hospital that I deliver at because my OBGYN does not deliver at that hospital. So I texted my spouse again, and I was like, hey, I'm gonna go ahead and leave, please come get me. So I let my charge nurse know. I was actually kind of scared to tell her. She's one of my favorite charge nurses, but I was scared to tell her because we were already short-staffed that day. It was busy. It was like a really, really busy day. So I didn't know how they were gonna manage, but that's just the kindness in my heart where I'm thinking about other people even though I was getting ready to deliver a baby. I finished up my charting. I gave report to the nurse that was gonna relieve me, which it ended up being somebody who was precepting that day. She went ahead and took an assignment, and her preceptee just finished off their assignment. So I left work at about 1 or 2 o'clock. My spouse came and picked me up. We went home. The kiddos were having a late lunch, so he prepped their lunch. I immediately took a shower, laid down, just had on some comfy pajamas, and by the time I laid down, my water broke. This was the first pregnancy that I actually had my water break, so it was kind of a different experience for me. I didn't really know how to handle it. I think I forgot to mention in my first 2 deliveries, the doctor did have to burst my water, but for this one, my water actually did break. Prepared myself for that. We got in the van and we headed to the hospital. Thankfully, my father-in-law met us there. He took the children, and my spouse and I were able to go into the hospital, get settled in, and before we knew it, my daughter was coming. With this delivery, I didn't even have an IV in. I was able to go in the room, put a gown on, and then by the time I sat down and the nurse was coming in, I basically told her, hey, I'm ready to push. Their first thing as a nurse is, okay, let me check you out, which I completely understand, but I knew she was coming. At the time, I did not know it was a she. With our 3rd baby, we did not find out the sex. It was a complete surprise. In my head, I was having another boy because I kind of carried how I carried with my son. So when she came out and they told me it was a girl, I was honestly shocked. Like, a girl? And the nurse kind of got scared because she thought that they had told me that it was a boy. So I had to quickly tell her, no, it was just my own thoughts. You know, I carried like I carried with my son, so I assumed that it was another boy. But we had another girl, and we were very happy and excited. I think being that I thought it was a boy my whole pregnancy, I loved her even a little more, being that she was a girl. So with her, it was about 2 pushes and she was out. She was my smallest baby. She was 6 pounds and 13 ounces. Compared to my first 2, she was like a little preemie, but I loved her nonetheless. Now she is a 2-year-old thriving little girl. So baby number 4. Baby number 4 came a little over a year and a half after baby number 3. This pregnancy, I was actually 2 days past my due date. And in my head, the first thing I thought was, dang, I could have worked another shift. So I was sleeping one night. This was night 2 of being off. And I basically started my maternity leave, but I did let my manager know, hey, if baby doesn't come, expect me to pick up a shift or 2. But on night 2, I decided to take a couple days at least to rest. But night 2, woke up at about 1 a.m. and I was having some pain. Night 1 that I was off, I did have some pain as well, but it kind of just went away. So night 2, I woke up with like really bad back pain, and I kind of got up and just not even realizing it, I kind of just prepared myself to be headed to the hospital. I put on like some pajama pants, or actually like some sweatpants. I put on some socks, and just kind of prepped myself without even really realizing that I was doing it. Had my hospital bag packed and ready to go. I woke after I laid there for a little bit and I noticed that the pain wasn't going away. I let my spouse know. He immediately was ready to go to the hospital. So we got our things together, we headed into the hospital, and thankfully we did, because no lie, the moment we got to the hospital, we went in through the emergency room, and of course this was during the quarantine period, so things were a little bit different. You could only have one visitor. We had our mask and everything like that. So we arrived at the hospital. We were waiting down in the emergency room for just a little bit. We got up to the room. Once we got there, I went into the bathroom. I barely even made it into my gown. I sat down on the bed, and within 2 minutes, I told my spouse that I had to push. By this time, we're 4 babies in, so he knew if I say I gotta push, the baby's coming. So he immediately got up. He pressed the call light for me, and told him, hey, Vanessa said she has to push. He even opened the door and flagged them down basically so that they would get in there. The nurse came in, and when she came in, she was like, oh, let me check you. So she managed to get one glove on, and I was like, no, I gotta push. But at the same time that I was saying, no, I have to push, a contraction came. So she was like, okay, I'll let you go through this contraction and then I'll check you. As that contraction was going, I was like, no, I have to push. So she was like, okay, go ahead and push. And she looked, and baby's head was already there. So she told my spouse, go ahead and call respiratory, have them come in. She was yelling out for a cart as well, the delivery cart. So I think she managed to get her second glove on and baby was already here. I had baby number 4. He was 8 pounds, 11 ounces. There was meconium with this delivery, so that part was a little bit scary for me. Just because they had to suction him a little bit, just make sure they got that gunk out of his chest. That part was a little bit scary, but all in all, delivery went well. 1.5 pushes and he was out and into the world. So with baby number 4, I didn't even manage to have an IV in. They actually put the IV in after delivery, just to make sure that everything was okay, which is a good thing that they did because I actually needed to get Pitocin after delivery. I had a little bit more bleeding than doctor was comfortable with, so they gave me some Pitocin to help slow that down a little bit, and they had to give that to me through the IV. So once we did deliver baby number 4, that's when we did the admission questionings and screenings and everything like that, and I did receive Pitocin due to the bleeding. I was okay with that only because I've had patients myself who came to our unit because they delivered babies and they were unable to stop the bleeding, or they were just bleeding very heavily. So thankfully I did not have to go to ICU or anything like that. The bleeding did eventually slowed down, so I'm very thankful of that. I delivered baby number 4 with no IV, and also baby number 2, I did not have an IV either. Baby number 2 and baby number 4, no IVs until after delivery. So all of my deliveries were pretty easy, knock on wood. I had very good pregnancies as well. I didn't have morning sickness with any of my babies. I did have a couple episodes of fainting or getting weak with my first 2 pregnancies, and with my first 3 pregnancies actually. I think the 4th one was the only one that I did not have those episodes with. But besides that, I did not have any issues or complications with pregnancy or delivery. Worked up until, as you could see, sometimes the day of delivery. I did not take any time off during my pregnancies in order to save all of that PL time for when baby actually arrived. I kept a pretty healthy diet overall. I did incorporate fish in my diets while I was pregnant. If you guys would like videos on what I ate during pregnancy and things like that, I can do that. Just leave a comment down below and I will make sure that I do that for you guys. But I kept an overall healthy diet. I worked through my pregnancies. Anything, of course, that was too strenuous on my body, I did not engage in, as far as heavy lifting or patient turns that were going to be too heavy for me. I would always ask for help just to make sure that baby and I were okay. But I hope you guys enjoyed my birth story videos. That was definitely the condensed versions. So I hope you enjoyed. And until next time, stay safe, be well, and live life.